Magic reveals itself to those who remember where to look for it. This is Magic Hour, and I'm your host, Taylor Page. Welcome back to Magic Hour, my loves. Taylor Page here.
And this is Claire, your producer. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
So this is a moment where we are recording this and we know that the episode is going to come out the week before the election. I myself just got out of therapy about this, so it's fresh. And I was talking to Claire before we started recording, and I was like, I don't want to go into too deep of a rant about the candidates and the state of the world and all of that, because that feels more like I'm just trauma dumping onto the hummingbird community, which is not the point of this podcast. But what I do want to focus on is my spiritual takeaways from this moment and how there's so many layers to the way that the macro political climate is triggering deep wounds and inside of me, and also really dysregulating my nervous system. And my therapist, Rachel Kelly, was saying, yes, we are all collectively sad and angry and upset at the state of the world and the suffering of the world. But when you feel it so viscerally in an all-consuming way in your body, it's highlighting something that needs to be healed in you that this is then a similar theme for. And so for me, it's been very layered, especially with women's rights being threatened. And right now I'm reading The Other Boleyn Girl, which is about King Henry VIII and all of his wives and women's rights back then and how it was for women. And it's just brought up a lot of witch wounds with women's rights being threatened. And also I feel like with people in the spiritual world, the healing world, a lot of us are able to identify the problem, to identify what's wrong. And we usually incarnate into families that are in need of healing, but we're like the last people that they will listen to. Like they are not looking to us to show them the light or identify how they could make their life happier. In fact, the real lesson is how to protect our light within those circumstances that we've incarnated into. And I feel like this election time is a reflection of that on a macro scale. Like, how can we protect our sensitivity and our light and our voice and our heart and our inner child through such an intensely dysregulating time? And so, yeah, it was really interesting to notice in therapy how I feel like there's a pattern in my life where I can see the problem so clearly, and I feel in the micro case gaslit by certain members of my family, and in the macro case gaslit by society itself and certain groups of people. And so it's been really dysregulating. It's been really an invitation to deeper layers that I didn't realize I had to heal, especially as a woman who has been literally grabbed by the pussy when I was 21 years old. I was sexually assaulted in that exact way. And this time period is just bringing up so many layers of deeper healing, coming back to myself, trusting my truth. And the last thing I'll say before I want you to talk, Claire, is that I think in the spiritual world, and with all of us who can see the patterns as well, we think it's our job to fix everything. Like, if the election doesn't go the way we want it to, or if the world goes down this path, what am I doing to fix it? And I think that's great to a certain extent, but it can be taken way too far, where we think it's our job to fix everybody's problems and show them the light and heal everyone and be a fixer and pour from an empty cup on the micro. And I just invite you to notice if you're doing the same on the macro. You know, it's great to be informed, of course, be informed, but on a certain level, are you engaging with this content, this election, this political atmosphere from a place of genuine passion for it, or from a sense of guilt and needing to fix everything and needing to change everyone and needing to hold on to the reins of control?
Yeah, I think for all of us, it's bringing up a lot of pain and frustration and helplessness and feeling like, how are we possibly here in this moment? How are we living through this? And, you know, on a macro level, it's terrifying. It's difficult to feel so powerless in it, even though we do have some power and we're going to get to vote. And I feel really hopeful about how it's going to go. And I think we have to maintain that hope, and we can't let the pessimism of it get us down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something else that's really interesting about this election is that I think people on both sides of the aisle are mirroring the same things back to each other. Like, we all feel misunderstood. We all feel triggered that if the other person's candidate wins, the world's going to end. We all feel misunderstood. We all feel isolated from friends and family. Like, it's just such a polarizing time. And as a spiritual practitioner, that can already be sort of an isolating place in consciousness to be. And so it's really interesting to experience the world in such a intensely polarized place. And so just what you're saying, I feel like it's creating the perfect container for a deeper level of shadow work, personal power, nervous system regulation. And speaking of nervous system regulation, this leads me to a reframe that I invite you guys to think about things through. So, we often speak a lot about fear versus intuition. In fact, that was the theme of my first really big podcast interview on Expanded Podcast with Jessica, was fear versus intuition. And it's such a powerful conversation. But what I invite you to think about it as is actually nervous system dysregulation versus intuition, because nervous system dysregulation is the cause of the fear. So fear can just be this kind of like nebulous, sort of amorphous concept that we can't really put our finger on. But when you bring it down to a level where it's like, no, it's actually a function of your nervous system to try to keep us safe, and something is triggering our fight or flight and our nervous system dysregulation, and that voice is trying to masquerade as intuition, I think it takes some of the woo-woo out of just fear versus intuition. Because I feel like with this work, so many people are in a fearful consciousness of like demons and dark spirits. And it's like, no, that's not. Let's bring it down to nervous system dysregulation versus intuition, because that also gives us a roadmap to stronger intuitive connection, especially through times like this election, where the nervous system dysregulation of this time, where the fear is so turned up, is like, World War III is going to happen and we're all going to die. It's like, it's so triggered in fight or flight. And that speaks over the voice of intuition and masquerades itself as intuition. And then before you know it, all of these TikTok tarot readers are like predicting the end of the world, and everybody's like feeling into each other's anxiety, and it just becomes so intense. And so I think nervous system regulation, feeling your feelings, practicing breath, somatic healing, tending to your inner child, coming back home to feeling safe in your own energy and protection that you can give yourself, is an essential roadmap to intuitive connection. And I think it's such intense circumstances on earth and in the States right now that it's like a master class in doing that. And I know so many people can feel really spiritually disconnected in times of collective unease and chaos and fright. And so this is an invitation for you to, again, coming back to that micro lesson of incarnating into a family that's dysfunctional, we've incarnated into a society and a world that's dysfunctional. And how can we protect our light and our connection in those circumstances? And I think that's a really valuable lesson of this time.
Yeah. And looking at these challenges as an invitation, as an opportunity to deepen your intuition, to deepen the strength of yourself. It's interesting. I'll notice like my best friend and I, we bump up against different challenges, and often like similarly different challenges. She has a similar thing that bumps up a lot for her. Mine is different. And I feel like it can be really frustrating where you're like, oh, this is happening again. Like, why? But I think it's again like this opportunity of this situation coming in again to help you learn this lesson, to help you shine this light about stepping more fully into your strength, not letting a situation like this deregulate your nervous system. And it's like in that way, we can kind of look at these things more as like opportunities and almost even gifts for our greater healing and greater strength and growth versus like, oh, this thing is happening again. And I think, on a macro level, even though I know the consequences of elections are much bigger than just like strengthening ourselves, the stronger we are each individually will have ripple effects for these types of things. And we won't be so easily divided by these like political tools. Because I think what you said is so true. It's like the powers that be know how to divide us and make us be angry with each other. And they're just playing us for their own gain. You know, most of these people are very, very wealthy and are just playing us to continue to be wealthy. That's basically what's happening, and trying to consolidate power. And by making us feel like we're pitted against each other, it's easier to divide us. And the stronger we are in our sense of self and power, the less easily we will let that turn into fear and dysregulate our nervous system and turn to anger and attacking, because most people want the same things. They want a life that lights them up. They want to be able to spend time with the people they love and feel like they're living with integrity. And I think that's true across all sides. So I think, yeah, looking at these things like a gift, an opportunity to strengthen your sense of self, even on the macro level and certainly on the micro.
That is such a good point. It's like that message I got a few years ago about there will be no power to the people if the people are not in their power. And so our job in this time, no matter where you fall, is to learn to regulate our nervous system and to not be a pawn on this roller coaster ride of media and violence and hatred and separation, and to find our center, to find the humanity in every single human being, to stay in our own place of love and power, even if that includes strong boundaries or doing what you need to do. But I think that that is the highest way forward in this moment, is like finding a way to stay as regulated as possible, to tend to ourselves, to talk to our inner child through this time so that we're not easy prey for the systems that want to divide us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a small step, but it's also a very possible step. And I think when we feel overwhelmed by like what you were saying at the beginning, like if the election doesn't go our way, how can I solve this? And it might seem small, but I really believe that shining our light as brightly as we can affects the people around us and helps them to do the same. And that has an unbelievably powerful ripple effect. And that's something you can do today in this moment in your home without feeling like you have to change the politics of the United States. That's a big ask. And changing the frequency of self from fear to love and kindness and hope does affect the person next to you. And that's a powerful, powerful thing, even if it seems small.
Absolutely. And that's why I wanted to share my takeaways on this week's episode, because I hope that I'm shining my light in a way that can put words to other people's experiences and help them sort of find their own center in this time. And I wanted to just transition really quickly to a cute little ghost story. Since this is coming out on Halloween weekend or week, I just thought this was such a funny story. And so on a completely different note, so our bedroom or our upstairs bathroom was under construction, and my office, obviously I used to work from home. I can't work from home anymore because of the construction. And so I worked at my husband's old office. So his lease wasn't completely up and his office moved to a different place. So I was in his office, in this ghost town office, when no one was using it and he didn't need it anymore for like a couple months. And so I was in his office working away, recording Magic Hour, doing readings, and he moved back into his office. The lease fell through at his other place, and he's like, we're actually going to move back. So if you see the background on YouTube, I'm at my mother-in-law's house working from here now. So he goes back and he's like, I don't understand how you were on the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi has been disconnected for 2 years. And the whole time I was on Riverside, which is where we record, and my laptop just like automatically connected to some internet. I didn't check it because I've worked in his old office before. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. It just reconnected. And he's like, yeah, I thought we had Wi-Fi because you've been working in there for months. It was disconnected for like 6 months, not 2 years. And so he was like, I thought we had Wi-Fi because you are like doing all your stuff in the office. And I came back and no one could get any work done on our first day in the office because there's no Wi-Fi. I'm like, is this not a ghost story? This Wi-Fi has been
Wi-Fi
dead.
ghost.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi died 6 months ago. And so I do not know like how that happened, but I worked with perfect internet the entire time. And I'd never been into a neighboring office. I've never connected. All of the offices nearby have their own private Wi-Fi. It's not like there's a communal thing. It like literally Ari and I have no idea what happened. And I was like, this is like the tale of haunted Wi-Fi. And I was like, I think my angels just knew I couldn't fall flat and I had important work to do. So they just created Wi-Fi for me.
That is hilarious. Yeah, I mean, we recorded so many episodes of Magic Hour while you were at that office and had perfect Wi-Fi. And you would think if it was something that like your Wi-Fi was just automatically connected to that network, that Ari and his team, that would have happened when they went to connect, but it didn't.
No, it didn't. And even when we were recording Magic Hour and stuff, other guests would have bad Wi-Fi. And I was like, it's okay, guys. Like, I'm on good Wi-Fi. Don't worry.
On
Fine.
Spirit's Wi-Fi. So
Isn't that crazy? We still don't understand
so
how.
wild. That is so wild. I guess at this point you can't see like what the network was. Like, have you gone back there to try and like log in?
Well, he activated the Wi-Fi now.
Oh, it'll be an
working.
unsolved mystery forever.
Literally. And I was like, I love that. Like, that's just a little
Yeah.
miracle journal example of magic, a little something, something that we couldn't know about.
I love that. You know, we needed the Wi-Fi and Spirit delivered.
Yeah, it was like that scene. It was like a scene in a scary movie where I'm like, yeah, you know, the little girl. And they're like, that little girl's been dead since 2005. Like, it literally felt like that, but with the Wi-Fi.
Oh my gosh, that's absolutely hilarious. Well, you often say that they work through technology. So there you go.
I know. I mean, it's just so cool. I'll probably never get over it. And Ari genuinely is like, honestly, with you, I'm not surprised. He's
Yeah.
like, nothing shakes me with a wife like you anymore.
Yeah. He's just like, it makes sense to me. I don't know.
Yeah, he's like, well, I know I'm married to a witch. I know what I signed up for. He didn't know the full extent, but he had a brief idea.
That's amazing.
Okay, great. So let's introduce our guest now. I feel a lot lighter that we got that
Yeah,
whole
me too.
discussion off of our chest, because just a note to the hummingbirds, I had like 2 or 3 guests lined up to talk about the energetics of the election, nervous system regulation, burnout protection. Like, I had all of this content leading up to the election that I wanted to share. And one guest was sick. One guest didn't end up working out. Like, one guest had to cancel because she was too busy. It's like things just kept falling through. And like in my heart, I knew there was more I wanted to say. And this is the last podcast before the election. So I feel a lot better getting that off my chest.
Yes, that's good. It's also just so important to talk about these things with people that you trust, and getting it out is just so important, even if you don't come to like a solution by the end, but it's just like
Yeah.
sharing in it with someone else and hearing that they're also having a similar experience is just like really grounding for me.
Absolutely. And like, even if you hear something that you disagree with, like, can you sit with that and not let it activate you? Like, can we as a society on every side work on not hating each other and fighting each other and getting activated and getting on our phones and venting? And it's just a very wounded way to relate to other people in the world. And I think I'm personally working on relating to the world and other people in a more healed way, because I think the world needs more of that. And I hope that early intro discussion could be a drop in the bucket of just hearing people put words to maybe some subconscious beliefs or feelings or things that haven't been discussed.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I'm so excited to invite on Kate of Wiccan Witch Empath as our guest today for this Samhain magic episode. Kate is a practicing Wiccan, a powerful witch, and a clairsentient empath. She is the woman behind the Instagram handle Wiccan Witch Empath and owner of the Etsy shop Something Gnarly. Hereditary witch with a lineage that traces back to the witches of Salem, Massachusetts, her magical specialties include candle magic, divination, and the supernatural. Being an empowered clairsentient empath, Kate focuses on helping people heal, grow, and prosper through the use of her craft and her gifts. Welcome, Kate. Kate, welcome to Magic Hour. So happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very grateful to be here.
Yay! So, the first questions that we like to ask the guests are, what are your big three? We'll start there. Your sun, moon, rising.
I am an Aquarius, Aries, Pisces are my big three.
Ooh, interesting
Yes.
combination.
Very interesting.
So, if you're an Aries rising, that means that your Pisces moon is in the 12th house.
Yes. Yes.
That's a very intense moon placement and a very psychic. I know that you put on your Instagram like how much of an empath that you are, and that Pisces moon in the 12th house. I mean, wow.
Yes. And I am a true Aquarius too, like to the T. I am an Aquarius. We rebel just for the sake of rebelling.
Honestly, I'm with it. And our producer Claire is an Aquarius too. I think Scorpios and Aquarius women are both very like strong female signs. And I think that we can get each other on that level. And I'm an Aries rising myself. And it's so convenient. It's so convenient to be an Aries rising because that means that all of the houses on the cusps are in their natural rulership because Aries is the first sign. So I always find it very convenient to be an Aries rising. And I guess we're one of the most rare rising signs, which is funny.
Ah, that's really cool.
Yeah. And so the second question that I like to ask our guests is how does your intuition speak to you?
My intuition is very overwhelming at times because I am an empath. There are moments where I just get very intense feelings, like I feel very strongly about this subject. And it could be the silliest subject in the world, but I feel very strongly one way or another. So a lot of times my intuition just comes out in like a wrecking ball kind of situation, and I'll get overwhelming feelings all over my body where if something is wrong, right, or excited, it really shows up in a wrecking ball type of way.
So when you say wrecking ball, do you mean it's just turned up to the nth degree? It's like very intense.
Yes, it is all or nothing.
Yeah, you're just like minding your own business when it comes in like a wrecking ball and sweeps you off your feet.
Yes, yeah, just like Miley.
That's awesome. And I like that because so many people talk about their intuition being so subtle and so quiet and things you need to tune in on. So it's really interesting that for you, it's so turned up that you describe it like a wrecking ball. That's that Pisces moon in the 12th house. You're not just hearing your intuition, you're swimming in the waters of intuition.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I'm really excited to get to interview you on all of the Samhain magic today. Can you start by just telling our guests a little bit about your background? And I know that you come from a long line of witchy women and witches, and I'm just wondering if you can share your story of how you got to where you are now as a witch.
Well, I have felt that I was different since I can remember really growing up in school. I've always felt like there was something a little bit different about me. But what was interesting is when I was growing up, I felt like everyone felt the way that I felt or could do the things that I did. I didn't realize that it was something that wasn't normal. I thought, oh, everyone can do this. And then as I got older, I realized that that's in fact not the case, that I am a little bit different. So I am a third generation witch. So my lineage traces back to Salem. The witch before me was my grandma's aunt, and I never got to meet her because the witch gene skips generations in our family. But my mom would always tell me stories about how sarcastic she was, but she would read tea leaves and all of that kind of magical stuff. And she was very much into the hippie 70 love movement, that was probably one of my favorite generations. I wish I lived in the 70s. That would have been so amazing. But she used to always tell me stories like that. And I grew up in a spiritual household. My family did go to church every now and then, but my mom and I did our own little thing. It was just me and her growing up, and we were more of a spiritual family, and she could premonition. That was one of her gifts. She wasn't a full witch, but she could premonition like you wouldn't believe. And to the point where she would predict when I was going to meet a boyfriend, or what time of year it was going to be, or even down to what I was wearing. So she was very strong in that area. So growing up, my gift was always something that was accepted and I could talk about, which I am very fortunate for that I grew up in an environment that nurtured me being different. And so when I was growing up, I would have a lot of situations where I would just know something, where I just knew this was a thing, and everyone would be like, "You're crazy. You're just being sensitive." Sensitive is the word I got so many times, and that you're just being sensitive to this. And then it would come back around that I was in fact right. And then I would start creeping people. Books just like one or the other, you were sensitive, or oh, you're too good at what you're doing. You need to stop, essentially. I was really close with my mom, and I was close with my grandparents as well. And half of my family did dive into Christianity, and then the other half stayed spiritual. And my mom and I just did our own thing. My empathy was at the forefront of a lot of my gifts. That was really what I was working on, and what I was focused on is, why am I different? What is this gift, and what can I do with it? And then my witchy side started to come into play as I got older, and I was physically drawn to the craft. So I would see dreams. I would dream of Rhiannon a lot. She would come into my dreams a lot. And at the time, I didn't realize it was Rhiannon. It was just this beautiful redhead that kept showing up in my dream with horses. It's really what happened. And then I just felt a physical pull to the craft. And from there, I self-studied and self-taught, and then was guided by the universe and my ancestors to get to the point where I am now, where I'm fully immersed in my craft. This is what I do. It's what I love. And I found my path and my chosen area.
That's amazing. And so just to clarify, so when you were talking about it skipping generations, does that mean, because you said your mom has powerful divination skills, which I think is very witchy as well, but is that delineation just that she wasn't drawn to study the craft? Is that what you mean by it skips generations? Because she had psychic gifts as well.
Correct. Yeah, she did have the psychic gift, but she wasn't drawn to the craft like I was. Like, I was yanked toward it, and she had the gift and she sat in that gift, but she didn't explore one way or another. And the only other person I could think of when my immediate family that was more on the spiritual side was my grandma's aunt, who used to read tea leaves. So I feel like it jumped from her a little bit to my mom, and then full blown with this millennial age.
So do you have knowledge passed down from your witchy ancestors, or any tidbits, or has that kind of been lost through the generations and then you had to remember yourself with your own self-exploration and study?
I am completely self-taught, and I would hear stories, and my mom would tell different stories, and there would be tidbits that I would pick up in those stories that meant something different to me, because I was viewing it from a spiritual witchy lens and things like that. But I was all self-taught for me.
We have a lot of similarities in our stories because my Serbian/Yugoslavian ancestors were known for speaking to spirits. And then that kind of got lost throughout the generations. And my mom is very spiritual and raised me very spiritual. And then I self-taught myself. And now I'm a professional medium and angelic intuitive. So I feel like that knowledge can never die. It's just waiting for the right ancestor to plug into it and remember it and explore it. And it feels like coming home, and that attraction to learning the craft that you're discussing. It's like I talk about in my Healing the Witch Wound course, this basically the modern witch's journey. And to me, that's the call where you're woken up and you're called to this work. And I feel like our angels, ancestors, and guides communicate so much through a hunger for knowledge. And
Yes.
I love that. I love that part of your story because it's so in alignment with what so many witchy women connect with. Talk to me about being connected back to Salem. Do you have ancestors at the times of the witch trials there, or is that just the area that your family traces back to?
That is the area my family traces back to. And I have done a lot of research, but what was really interesting is how I found out I traced back to Salem. My mom has passed. She got cancer and had passed away about 2 years ago.
Literally
And
same. My mom passed of
really,
cancer, yeah, 3 years ago. But yeah, so they're probably
it's
together
so
right
hard.
now.
Yeah, yeah. The world's a very different place without your mom. I'll just say that. And to this day, I still get emotional. So I'm going to
Yeah.
try and get to the point. My mom was diagnosed in December and passed away in March. So I literally only got a few months with her. And I was her full-time caregiver. I would go to all of her appointments and do any of the things that she wanted to do and make sure she was taken care of and in good spirits and that the house was cleansed and all that stuff. And she was surrounded by clear quartz crystals and things like that. And then she had a stroke, and the stroke kind of escalated
Yeah.
things. And from the stroke on Friday, she was gone by Monday. So during that time, my aunt and I actually sat with her, and she wasn't coherent or anything, but I was not going to leave her side, right? You just don't leave her side. And my aunt was talking to me, and we were sitting there, and she's talking about our family and things like that. And my aunt and I don't have the best relationship. It's a challenging relationship, just in the sense that we are very different religiously. She is a devout Christian, and I am a devout Wiccan.
Ah.
So we have a mutual respect, but we are very different. So it can
Wow.
raise challenges. So we were sitting there and we were talking about something, our family, some funny story she was telling me, and she was like, our ancestry traces back to Salem. And in that moment, I rose out of my chair and I was like, I'm sorry, because I didn't realize any of that because we didn't have a relationship. And I'd done my own research and I never got to that conclusion. She's like, yeah, I did ancestry. And it traced us all the way back to Salem during the witch trials and started naming all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm sorry. You're telling me I'm a descendant of Salem? Like, I got so excited in that moment because I didn't realize that my heritage traced back there. I thought I was like a lone witchy solitary practitioner, and I am now a descendant of Salem. So she was talking to me about that and some of the stuff she found. And within about an hour after that, my mom had passed away. So
Wow.
I feel like there was a part of my mom that was waiting for us to have that conversation before she left. I think she was
Wow.
waiting for me to know where I come from because it's just been me and her. It was always just me and her my whole life. So I think she was waiting. It was a very beautiful and very emotional moment considering
Yeah.
what followed, but how I came to know that information will stick with me forever because I just remember that moment of I was supposed to know that right
Yeah.
now. This was supposed to happen. I think she was just waiting for
Yeah.
me to know that before she left.
That's so powerful. And what I find so interesting about this story, too, is that you already had discovered your love of the craft and your own intuition and your own spirituality before you found that out. It's not like you found that out and then tried to go down a path because of that. And I love the way that worked out because sometimes I love when we find out validations on the path, but we already intuitively knew who we were, how we should move forward. It's like I didn't find my husband's birth chart until after we got married. Then I got his birth time, like literally so soon after, and it just worked out that way. And I really think that's how it had to be so that I could authentically go on the journey. So what a beautiful gift and validation on your path. And it's almost like this last gift that your mom facilitated by bringing you and
Right.
your aunts together. So that's so beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a beautiful moment and a very hard one. So,
Uh-huh.
yes.
It's
Yes.
crazy how much I can relate and resonate with your story. And I'm so sorry for your loss. Like my mom had pancreatic cancer and she passed very quickly from diagnosis. And I thought I had way more time with her than I did. It was a very tough time. She was my best friend. She awakened the spirituality in me. She was a Pisces sun and moon in the 12th house. So she was very psychic, very, very deep, but had a high level of the witch wound and was very much in the broom closet. And so I think I'm like the next generation kind of pushing the magic forward for my lineage. So this episode is coming out the week of Halloween. So I'm wondering if you can talk to our listeners about Samhain, about the origins of Samhain, about the significance of this time of year, of the witch's new year. Just let our listeners know about the significance.
Yes. Samhain is my favorite of all the Wiccan Savage. It's my absolute favorite. It is the one night a year where the dead can return to the living and hang out with us. And the veil between the worlds gets really thin during this time of year. So communication with the other side becomes clearer, more vivid, especially in dream form. I know that my dreams have been incredibly vivid. Starting in September this year, I feel like the veil was thin almost immediately going into October. It's the perfect time to honor our past loved ones, past pets, past friends. It can even be someone that you didn't know personally and just felt connected to. Anyone you want to honor that's passed, this is the perfect time to do it. Samhain is the one day a year where the dead get to rejoin the living, and on that day is the day when spell work and divination is also at its most powerful. So that is a perfect day to do any type of spell work or divination, whether it's scrying or tarot. It's a perfect day. And one of the biggest parts of Samhain is the ancestor dinner. That is one of the biggest parts. And usually we do something small, like pizza or something easy, but we always sit at the table and we always set plates for them. And I usually set one for my ancestors, one for my grandparents, and then I set one for my mom now as well. And then we sit down and serve them. So I put one piece of pizza, we'll just say, on each plate. And we all enjoy dinner together. And I think that's probably one of my most favorite parts of Samhain, in having that ancestor dinner and having them join us. Before that, I put little tea light candles in the windows to help guide them to our home so we can have ancestor dinner together.
That's such a beautiful ritual. And I know traditionally it's called dumb supper, where basically in, ancient Europe and stuff, they would set places for the deceased loved ones. And you can really do this up. It can be as simple as what Kate's saying, just put a slice of pizza to them, hang with them, serve them, hold space for them, welcome them in. You can put photos of them on the table. You can put name tags like you would on a Thanksgiving dinner or something and tell everybody where to sit. It's just a lovely tradition. And I'm so glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you about it next. And I find that so beautiful because the spirit world is here around us 24/7. We can access our ancestors 24/7. But what I think makes Samhain so magical and special is it's on the forefront of our consciousness that we can. We're all collectively focusing on it. And I think that's a big reason why there's definitely a little extra something in the air. The veil is definitely thinner, but I think also collectively we all feel that and amplify it together. So I love that. And I also find it really fascinating how the wheel of the year matches up with the astrology wheel, and that Samhain falls in Scorpio season, which is literally the time of death and release and rebirth. And it lines up with the fall and the leaves falling away. And it's always struck me that this is the witch's new year. So it's not the same as the astrology new year, which is the first day of Aries season, the spring equinox. It's the first day of, not the first day of fall. It's like the delineation climbing to winter towards the winter solstice. And so I find it really interesting that the new year starts with release. So instead of planting new seeds, it's about, okay, it's a time where the veil is thin. It's an extra powerful time for divination. It's a time for reflection. And based off of this, what am I not carrying into the new year with me? Based off of ancestral healing and the love of my ancestors being around, what cycles am I breaking? What am I shedding? What am I no longer carrying forward?
And there's 3 questions that I like to ask people on their birthdays. And I think that it applies to the collective for this new year, which is New Year moment, which is, what was my favorite part of this year? What do I want to bring more of into the next year? And what am I leaving behind in the last year? And I think that's even something that you could do a divination spread or a tarot card pull. It's like, create sacred space with this holiday, because I love that the witch's new year starts with death, because it speaks to the death, light, death cycle of all things. And so I think that it's really beautiful that we're in a moment of deep reflection, deep connection with our guides, deep connection with our ancestors, so we can move forward from the most intentionally guided, supported place where our ancestors are all around us telling us that we're not alone.
Absolutely. It's just a magical time. You can definitely feel it in the air, like you said, and it's just a beautiful time. And it's a great time to release what no longer serves you and head into the dark half of the year and the winter months with clarity, and be able to heal and ground and come out in spring with all the new goodness.
Absolutely. And so a part of the release is cord cutting and cord cutting rituals. And so I'm wondering if you can speak to our community about ideas for that, like releasing and any way to make it into a spell or a ceremony or a ritual, something intentional and grounded in the physical to leave behind what they're not bringing in to this next year.
Yes, there's multiple ways, but I will speak to the 2 ones that I appreciate the most. Number 1 is a very simple cord cutting. So if you have a photograph or a concert ticket or some sort of memorabilia related to what you wish to let go, you can go to a fire, so a bonfire or even one in the home, and burn that piece. Or you could write what you want to release going into the winter and burn that piece of paper as well. So the fire burns it and cleanses it and gets rid of it for your future. So that's a very simple one someone can just do while they're at home, hanging out or whatever. And the other one that I personally love to do is a cord cutting spell. That is one of my most popular, we'll say, spell works from my Etsy shop. And I do 2 spell works, so it's 2 candles, and you can do cord cutting for anything. It could be an ex, it could be a place, it could be a behavior, it could be truly anything you just don't want attachment for anymore. This would work. So it's 2 candles, and you adjust the candles accordingly based on what the intention is. Is it to cut cords with a loved one, have it, so on and so forth. And then the string that binds them together, that will burn. As you burn the candles, that will start to burn. And as it burns and as it disconnects, the cord breaks, and you're essentially released from that activity or that person. So those are the 2 biggest ways for me.
I love that. And can you explain to our audience what dressing the candle means?
Yes, when you dress the candle, I do a spell, and I'll put a bunch of herbs related to that spell and some oils related to that spell and ground them up and put them on the candle. And that's dressing the candle with the spell.
Beautiful. And I'm a fan of candle magic myself. And so if people at home are dressing their candles, isn't it true that if you go up, it's what you're calling in? If you dress the candle down, it's like what you're releasing. Like there's some little finesses that you can do when you're dressing the candle, right?
Yes, if you spin it clockwise or counterclockwise, that also depends on releasing or intaking, depending on what the intention is. And you can also put the oils on the candle and then the herbs, and that will help the herbs stick to the candle better. I get a lot of questions about how do you make the spell stick to the candle, and it's the oil. The oil is the key. And then you could also heat the outside of the candle to get the spell to stick as well. So either one of those would work great.
Interesting. I love that. And something to just add is if you want, you can carve in a name on the candle or a sigil on the candle or
Yes.
a symbol on the candle. You can also have that thing that you were going to burn, like a piece of paper or a concert ticket or a photo, and put it under the candle and let it all burn. So get creative. There's no one right or wrong way to do magic. It's what
Agreed.
moves you. And then also, like for me, as I'm doing any form of candle magic, I like to sit with the intention as the candle burns, because I think the candle part in the physical part, that is so beautiful and that ritualizes it and that brings our intention into the physical form. But I also think the visualization, the intention, and the rewiring of our subconscious brain is a big part of the magical process as well. So, like, for example, if you're cutting cords with someone, you could be focusing on forgiving them while it's burning. You could be
Right.
focusing on
Yeah.
identifying the ways that you've internalized insecure stories about yourself and rewiring their narratives. Like starting to pair the physical with the intentional and visualization takes your magic to a whole other level.
I would have to agree. Absolutely.
I remember there was a candle magic spell I did. So my husband and I both lost a parent to cancer in our first year of marriage. So that was like a very intense time. And
Very
my
hard.
husband
Yeah.
did not realize he was marrying a witch. I mean, he like kind of did, but not to the extent. And I remember there was one candle magic time in particular that blew my mind. And my husband's dad had colon cancer and he was in a new trial for a new drug medication. And we were all tripping out. We were so scared for him to take this experimental drug. We all had a bad feeling about it. And so my husband didn't even know this until years later. But I got a black candle. I did a protection spell. And I basically wrote my father in law's name on this paper and that he was healthy and that the trial went well. And I sat for 5 or 6 hours while that candle was burning, visualizing that outcome, sending him protection, like putting that visualization piece into it. And he was the only person that did not pass away in the trial. He was the only person out of like 12 people that survived that trial. And
Wow.
nobody in his family knew that I was doing magic on the side to protect him, but I knew. And that was one of the moments that I was like, I know that correlation isn't exactly causation, but at the same time, in my heart, I could feel the power of what I was doing.
Right. Absolutely. That is a beautiful story.
Yeah,
Scary trial, too. My goodness.
I know. I know. I think, like, cancer is such a theme of this episode, and it must be coming up a lot because this is a time where we honor our ancestors. And I know that so many of us have ancestors who passed of cancer.
Absolutely. It is absolutely terrible.
I'm wondering if you can tell maybe a story of one of your spells or an example of a magical thing that you put into the world, because I love to tell stories like this so that our listeners can expand their mind to what's possible or what it actually looks like. And I feel like a lot of magic is done behind the scenes or not spoken about. And I totally respect that and understand that if you don't want to share too. But if you have a story of just a time that you felt supported by a spell or something came to fruition, just anything you feel called to share.
Sure. One of the things that comes to mind first is when my mom was still alive, I did a happiness spell for her. She was feeling, a little down in the dumps one day, and I did a happiness spell for her, and I used a yellow candle and oils and herbs as I do. And when the cell was burning, I looked inside the candle, and the oil had actually made a heart shape around the wick of the candle, and it was truly beautiful. And I took a picture of it and I use it in some of my marketing for my small business because that picture just means everything to me. It worked when we talked about it and I sent it to her and it meant a lot to her. And I think that was a big thing for me too, is when I sent it to her, she's like, oh, wow, that's incredible. And she felt better. And it was just a really beautiful moment, just a perfect heart around the wick. So it was great.
That is so beautiful and so special. And something I love about witches is that, like, overall, we're just trying to help people. Like, you just wanted your mom
Right.
to be
Yes.
happy. I just wanted my father-in-law to be protected. And that's something I really do like about Wicca is the harm none. I think that is really
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes, that is really what it's about. It's such a beautiful practice, witchcraft. It's all about helping people and using our gifts to heal the world and bring magic back into the world. I think this world is very rough and hard to deal with at sometimes, and magic makes it better and makes it, magical. It's the best way to put that. It just makes it a better place.
It does. And it brings our intention into the physical. It physicalizes our
Yes.
intention. And I think that's so beautiful too. So, for our listeners who might be dabbling or new to this work, they're like, okay, I hear the ancestor supper, I hear the honoring of them. So, aside from setting the places, inviting your ancestors in, lighting the candles so they can find the way, and offering them food, do you speak to them? What do you do inside of that sacred container with circling back to that supper?
I do talk to them. I talk to them year round,
Mhm.
though, so it's a little bit different for me, but I talk to them especially on that day. I also have an ancestor altar, and it is up year round, but during this time, I bring little pumpkins and I bring little pumpkins to my mom and grandparents' resting place as well. That was one of the traditions my mom and I did when she was still alive, is we would bring little pumpkins to my grandparents as part of a Samhain tradition. So I've kept that tradition going, and now she has her own little pumpkin. So you can do ancestor altars where you do pictures or anything that means anything to them, their favorite color, flowers, whatever it may be, just in a way to honor them. So usually I will talk to them and I'll light a candle at my ancestor altar. It's usually an appreciation candle or a gratitude candle just for everything they've done for me throughout the year, saying thank you and making sure I honor them in that way and showing gratitude. That's really the big focus for me after the dinner, was getting that spell to say thank you for everything.
I love that so much. I love the gratitude candle. And I'm so glad that you brought up the ancestor altar. You're always a step ahead of me. That's what I was going to ask about next. I just really want people to get from this episode really tangible ways that they can practice in the magic of Samhain. And an ancestor altar is beautiful, and just creative ways of honoring. Like, I live on a lake, and on my mom's passing day, I every year put a rose in the lake for her and fill it with my love for her, and then set it out to the lake. And every year I add one more rose for every year she's been gone. So this year I put 3 roses into the lake for her. And so it's like, it doesn't have to be like, sometimes spells can be this like recipe book of like a pinch of this, a dash of this, and do this dance and say these words. And that's fine if that works for you. But I truly think the most powerful form of magic is what you feel inspired and led to do in the moment, and what feels authentic to you. And so I think that this week, while the veil is extra thin, while it's on the top of all of our mind, it's like such a beautiful way to do what feels unique and creative to you to honor your ancestors. So that can be a gratitude candle, that can be having them for supper, that can be baking their famous recipes in the pots that they gifted you. It could be anything. But I know as a medium, they like when we use their objects. They like when we read their books. They like when we make their recipes. Those are acts that they co-create with us. And I think something else you can do is, if you're a creative type, literally invite your ancestors to paint with you, to write with you, to dance with you, because I know spirit really loves to work in a creative way too.
Yes, absolutely. The dance is a big part. I have 3 dogs, so I have my little familiar. He's a 17-year-old Pomeranian, and then I have 2 5-year-old labs, and we do, I call them doggle dance parties. I turn on music, usually in Prince, usually, because that's one of my lab's favorite artists is Prince. So I usually put on Prince, and we dance around, and I was doing that a few days ago, and the lights started to flicker, and I was like, oh, you guys are here with us, and you're joining in on the doggle dance parties. So absolutely.
That's so beautiful. And so, for your familiar, does he work with you in a magical way? And how do you feel like he's your soul dog? How did you find him? I'm just so curious about that.
Oh, True is my everything. That's his name is True, and I always tell everyone that if you pet him, he gives good luck. So you got to give him lots of love, because then he's going to give you guys some good luck. And I haven't been wrong, actually, but he loves the love. So I have had him since pet stores were in malls. That is how long I have had him. I got him in Beverly Hills, California, because I lived in California for a little bit, and he's truly been my support. That is the biggest thing. He always makes me feel better and will always try and cheer me up. And if something isn't going right, he always does something silly to make me feel better. So it's really the support from him, and you can do it, mom. Like, you can totally do this is really what I get from him. He does help me. Sometimes, a lot of times, he'll sit near me when I'm doing spell work and things like that and offer his energy to add to the spell to make it more powerful. But really, it's a support thing is what he gives me.
That's so beautiful. I love familiars. I love animals. I have my little guy right back here, Ronaldo. He's on the couch. He's 15 and he's
Oh,
such an angel. And it's so true. They just give their presence and their love and their support, and they're just there in the background. I love the dog dances that you do. That's so fun.
yes, yes.
I wanted to ask, so we have this transitional moment that we're in right now. And even if you're listening to this a week or two after it comes out and maybe Halloween/Samhain has passed, we're still in this liminal Scorpio season place of death and rebirth. And so we've talked about the release, the cord cutting, the honoring of the ancestors. What about the setting new intentions? What about the element of fire that wants to come through with this time period?
Yes, this is the perfect time to set new intentions with it being the witch's new year and going into the dark half of the year. The dark half of the year is a perfect time for healing, and I always relate it back to the hermit in tarot, and is really taking that time to grow and expand and heal from anything that is still lingering and setting those new intentions. So you got to get through the healing part and the processing part and get to the clarity part in order to get to the new intentions. So for Samhain, setting those new intentions is this is what's going to be in my future. And setting those intentions is also perfect, especially if you write them down, because it's a great way to manifest them as well. Or adding them to a inspo board. I think those are what they're called.
A vision board?
A vision board. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Especially adding them to your vision board is perfect. It's a great time to set that. As we're going through our reflection period and our healing period, we know that coming out the end, what our focuses are going to be.
I love that. I love that so much. And so, like we've said before, this is a perfect time for divination. So I'm wondering, for people with tarot cards or oracle cards out there, do you have any recommendations for a type of spread or good questions to ask their guides for this time of year, or just anything to share for people who want more clarity via their cards?
Ooh, yes. I have During this day, I have quite a bit of tarot cards as far as a collection. I have a few different types, but I do have one card deck that is truly my ride or die, that I have had my very first one, and it just is my best friend, right? We always have that one tarot deck that is like perfect for us. So I recommend using your perfect tarot deck during Samhain. And I do a traditional spread, so I will start with 3 cards and then I'll just build from there, depending on what the cards say, how I'm feeling. And it's a good time to ask about the future and what the future holds. That's usually where my focus is.
I love that. Yeah. And if you want to do just like a 3-card pull, I think a good place to start is, what do you want me to know about the energy right now? How can I move forward? What do I need to let go of? I think that those are just like 3 very basic ways to just start. And then when you're talking about building, are you talking about like clarity cards, or if other questions come up, pulling a card for that? Is that what you mean about continuing to
Yes,
pull cards?
both. Yes, yes. If
Mhm.
I need more clarity, or if I'm talking about the future and I'm like, oh, what about this? And then I'll pull more cards in relation to that. So sometimes I'll end up with quite a bit of cards, but it's because I'm going through it and just flowing with the questions and just letting it happen.
I love that. And I think that's also a bit more of an advanced practice. And if you're listening and you aren't super practiced with cards, if you start to get to a point where pulling more cards is bringing more questions than answers, then I would invite you to stay with the original cards that you pulled and let them make more sense to you as time goes on, instead of looking for the card that you want to see.
Agreed, agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think a 3-card pull is a really great place to start, especially for beginners.
I agree. Yeah, I think less is more when you're a beginner with working with cards. It's funny because I have my trusty deck right here. I've been reading with this deck since I was 17. It's Colette Baron Reed's Wisdom of the Hidden Realm. It's an oracle card deck. I love it so much. I know it like the back of my hand. Usually when I pull a card, I already know what it is before I flip it over because I know it so well. And it's so powerful to have that trust and to know that language with that one deck. It's not that you can't have that with other decks, but it's a soul connection, just like anything else. There's just
Right.
a next level of resonance with that.
Absolutely. We always got that one deck that is just our ride or die.
Yes. And I loved what you said about the cord cutting spells and how it's not just for people. It can also be thoughts, limiting beliefs, ideas. I love that. And so, what about moving into protection magic or space clearing for this time of year? Because that's a part of release as well.
I would say keeping your home cleansed at this time in the year, especially, is very important. So I burn a lot of frankincense. My house always used to smell like frankincense or sage, depending on the day. So really keeping your home cleansed and the energy feeling good, like that. It's your home is your safe space. It's where your whole family is. You want to keep them protected, and you don't want anything, negative attached to anyone. So I think keeping your home cleansed during this point and during this time of year is really, really important. That's what I would say, just because the veil, again, is very thin, so it lets through ancestors, but it can also let through negative energy. So just being cautious of that as well.
I love dragon's blood incense. I think that
Yes, dragon's blood.
people sleep on dragon's blood a lot, but to me, it's so rich and it just feels like a wall is being put up. And I know that indigenous cultures have asked us to stop working with white sage, and I'm respectful of that. So I really like to work with dragon's blood incense. What about you?
Yes, dragon's blood and frankincense.
Yeah.
Frankincense is a big one for me. I burn that quite a bit.
I love that. I need to look into frankincense. And do you work with like different types of incense for different types of vibes, or what can you recommend with that?
Dragon's blood's a really good one. I would have to agree with you on that. Dragon's blood is incredible, especially for protection. It is great for protection. So it adds that cleansing element and the protection as well. So I think that's a great option. Frankincense is great for cleansing. It'll cleanse whatever you got. And then also one thing I like to do, because I'm a sensitive, and this is great for other sensitive, when I take a bath, just a regular bath, I will put a little bit of sea salt in the bath, and that will physically cleanse anything off of me that may be attached that's negative. So that's also another cleansing technique that I love to use, just because negative energy and entities love sensitive people. They're like their favorite thing in the whole world, unfortunately. So they can get attached, and having those cleansing rituals are very important. If you're just feeling off, like something is just off with you, just jumping in like a regular bath, you can do all your regular stuff, just a pinch of sea salt, and that will help cleanse your energy. So it's really good for everyone as well.
I love that you brought up bath magic because I, as such a highly sensitive person, rely on baths so much. And especially before I really started to develop my intuitive gifts, which I have a theory that spirit is all love, and that sometimes these negative attachments that we feel are really highlighting unhealed parts of ourselves or where we need to reclaim our power. And that sometimes the spirit world turns that up until we claim our mediumship gifts. So I feel like the people who are highly sensitive attract that experience because it's like waking you up to your mediumship, to your gifts, to your power. And I always feel like with this path as a medium and intuitive, there's a necessary stepping through fear to reclaim the gifts. And so I think that there always has to be some initiation through feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And I know everybody's experience with this is different, but that's just my experience with it. But I'm so happy that you brought up the bath magic because it's so simple and so effective. Like, talk about death and rebirth. That basically happens every time I take a bath. Like, I come out and I am a new person. So I love that you brought that up.
Absolutely. Yep.
And do you feel like, have you started developing or exploring your own mediumship gifts?
I have. A lot of mine come in the form of dreams, just like my mom. That is really where I have expanded my gift, is in the dream form. That's where a lot of it comes from. What about you? Do you get the premonition dreams and such?
Yes, I've always been a very strong dreamer. I know my moon isn't in the 12th house, which is just like queen of dreams, but I've always been a strong dreamer. And I think for people out there who are like a bit newer on their path and figuring out their intuitive gifts, I think dreams is like such a big place that our angels and guides and ancestors speak to us because all of our guards are down and we're in that liminal space. And actually, I think the dream world is the closest thing we can understand to what it's like to be in spirit without a body. Like we're just pure consciousness. And I think the dream world is very close to what the spirit world is. So I think there's an interesting overlap there. And I have this interesting theory that the way we get information in our dreams are the same as our top psychic senses. So in your dream, are you like feeling? Are you seeing? Are you hearing? Are you knowing? And it's interesting to start to break that down. For me, I was very plagued when I first started my journey as a medium. Like before I developed my mediumship, I was very scared and I felt, negative things around me and I had nightmares and my coat closet would rattle. But as soon as I started to develop, I realized that I was projecting fear onto the unknown and that most of it was just trying to wake me up and give me the message. And then as soon as you get the message, they don't have to keep doing that. I think that humans are the scary part. I think the spirit world is like beautiful, and I think we're the scary part.
I would have to agree with that.
Yeah. And I think having a dream journal, do you keep a dream journal?
Yes, I do. I have a few of them, but I feel like dream journals are so helpful. They are incredibly helpful and they're really great to look back on and things like that. So anyone that's thinking about starting a dream journal, do it. It'll change your life. It is wonderful. I feel like this year that with the veil, like my dreams have been incredibly vivid, so vivid, and some most good, some bad, but mostly good. And a lot of times that's where I get to see my mom too, is in the dream world. So I
Yeah.
love that.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, the dreams have been very vivid because Neptune is in Pisces and it's been in the final degrees of Pisces. So all of us like the veil feels thinner because of this. We're all spiritually tuned in. People are waking up at record numbers. People are developing their own gifts and the dream world is out of hand this year. It's been like every night is a vivid dream. It's wild.
Yes. Yep, absolutely.
They're like, you know what? If you guys are always going to be on TikTok, if you're always going to be on your screens, if we can never get your attention in the waking world, we are going to infiltrate your dreams until you get the message.
Absolutely.
I also just wanted to circle back to bath magic. And I think it's really fun to use bath bombs in this too. So I love how simple just adding some sea salt and doing a cleansing ritual that's so powerful just in itself. But I think also similar to candle magic, you can pick a design or a shape or a color or a smell of a bath bomb that resonates with the intention you set. And sometimes what I like to do is visualize the water filling up with what I'm letting go and then sit in the tub as all the water drains out and imagining it leaving me. And then I shower and rinse off and I like truly a new woman after that.
Yes, I think that's wonderful. That's beautiful.
You can even carve like a sigil into a bar of soap and cleanse yourself with it. Like that's what I love about magic and witchcraft is that you can just have so much fun. It truly is a creation, like it's creative. It's a mystical art. And that's what I love about this world is that it is an art form. It's like this beautiful fusion of mysticism, intuition, and creativity. And I find that to be so beautiful.
I agree. And I think it's so individually focused that it's whatever feels really good to you. I get a lot of questions from baby witches asking, how do I start? Those kind of questions. And it's all about your journey. Like your journey is not going to be the same as someone else's. It's all your personal journey and what feels good to you. If it feels great, do more of it. If it doesn't feel good, stop doing it. Everyone is going to have their own journey, their own specialties, their own gifts, their own strengths and opportunities. Everyone is different. So don't think, oh, this person does this a little bit better. And that may be, but you do this better because everyone's different. Everyone has their own strengths. And that's what makes us so great is as a witchy community, we're all so different that we complement each other and we balance as well. So I think it's truly beautiful how we can be different yet come together in such a magical way.
I love that so much too. And it sets us apart from a lot of organized religions that you can only worship in one way or look one way or follow one
Right.
set of rules. And I love that in the witchy community, it's like, no, don't do something because you feel like you should, or because this person
Right.
did, or because you're fearful that if you don't do it this way, this bad thing is going to happen. This isn't a place for fear and superstition. It's a place for love, creativity, power. I think that's so
Acceptance. Yes.
acceptance. And I love how many different types of witches there can be. You can be a
Yes.
divination witch,
Mhm.
you can be an astrology witch, you can be a kitchen witch, you can be a medium. There are just so many different types of witches that you can be, and every single person has a place and a reason for that. Like, we're all on different radio stations, and I think that together that makes it much more beautiful than all of us just playing the same exact song.
Life would be very boring if we were all the same. I think
Absolutely.
our individuality is what makes us so great.
Absolutely. And so, Kate, where can our audience find you? And can you talk a little bit about your offerings? Like you were saying about your Etsy shop. Can you just talk to us a little bit about that and where people can find you?
Sure. So I am the proud owner of the Instagram Wiccan Witch Empath. I also have a small business on Etsy. And from there, I do a lot of spell work. I can do love spells, cleansing spells, cord cutting spells. I also have tangible product. I have candles, sachets, and I can do tarot readings as well. So through Instagram or Etsy are the two main places people can find me.
Amazing. And I'm sure this goes without saying, but I always feel like I have to say, you'll never DM people. Like, we all have so
No.
many fakes out here these days.
Yes, I listened to your podcast. I think it was last week. Claire at the end was saying, we won't DM you, we won't. And I'm like, wow, it had gone to that point because I knew exactly what you guys were talking about. Because everyone in the witch community either has it in their bio or they say it in their stories. And I had it in my stories at one point too, just on how the fake scam community is just a little crazy now that we have to say these things because they're just so out of hand.
I
That's
know.
unfortunate. It's very unfortunate.
It's so unfortunate because we're all working to create sacred, safe spaces, and that's just,
Right.
it undermines it. But at this point, you can tell by the level of engagement, you can tell by how many posts somebody has, and ultimately, no practitioner that is a real practitioner is ever going to reach out to you first for their services.
Absolutely. I have not known anyone to ever reach out to someone and ask for a reading or say something that half their messages don't even make sense sometimes. And I'm
Yeah.
like, did they read that? I'm confused. So yes, I will never message you or anything like that. If you want a reading or a spell work, come to my Etsy shop. That's where you can find me, or on Instagram at Wiccan Witch Empath.
Oh, thank you so much. I know that this
Thank
episode is
you.
going to excite
Makes
people and get them really
So-
hyped up to have some beautiful Samhain magic. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Yes, thank you so much. I just have one question for you, if that's okay.
Oh, of course.
What is the one main way your mom communicates with you now?
That's a really good question. And I don't even know if anyone's ever asked me that. Tables turned while I'm being interviewed.
Yes.
So it's interesting because people would think that as a medium, I speak to my mom all the time because I can connect with other people's past loved ones, and I do that professionally. But it's different when it's your people, because for me, the less I know about someone, the easier it is for me to connect with them on the other side, because it's not my mind coming in with what I know and filling in the blanks. And so for my mom, I know her so well that usually I can either just feel that she's with me. But the other thing is she sends white butterflies as her sign. So she and I would talk about this before she passed, because of course you probably spoke about this too with your spiritual mom. Like one time we were just on a plane to the Redwoods and I was like, Mom, if you pass, what's your sign going to be? And she was like, white butterflies. I was like, duh, I already knew that. I should have known that. And so I know that's her sign, as well as rainbows. And my mom is very active on the other side. She sends so many signs, so many white butterflies in like the most magical way. I studied mediumship in England last year at Arthur Findlay College, and I was walking in London after that week that she had come through so many times. And I just stopped in my tracks. There was a plastic cutout white butterfly just on the sidewalk right in front of where I walked. There's just so many beautiful ways. And I always say like spirit communication is a two-way street. Like we always look for signs and wait for them, but we also have to create sacred space to connect with them. So I'll just be like, Mom, let's spend the hour together. Let's spend the day together. And I'll just follow what my heart feels is right and think of her and remember her and think of times of love with her. And I just try to keep that connection and that love alive because I really believe that our relationship doesn't end with physical death. It just continues on in another form. So definitely signs, definitely feeling her. Dreams as well. I have had some really beautiful dreams of her. It's really beautiful whenever those moments happen. It really is.
Absolutely. I just think that is so wonderful. And I was curious because my mom communicates with me through birds. Birds is the biggest way she communicates with me, and dreams. And I just think it's so wonderful. Our communication hasn't stopped, it's just changed. Our communication style has just changed. We still are very, very close. It's just a little different now. And we communicate a little bit differently. And I think looking for those signs and talking to them is so important. And I remember right after my mom passed, I got a dream from her, and I was walking out of a dressing room and I was going to go on because all of a sudden I was in a band. And I walked past an old timey phone like they used to have on the wall. And I stopped. I was like, Mom, and she turned around and I got to hug her and we hugged, and it felt for like 5 minutes, and it was so wonderful. And that made me feel so much better. And it was such a beautiful moment. So that's also another reason to have dream journals, is so you can remember those wonderful moments. So I was just curious on how your mom communicates with you.
No, I love that. Thank you for asking that. And I'm just wondering, because for me, after my mom passed, crazy, my life and my business and my relationship and buying a house, it's like all of these things locked into place after she passed, and I knew she was helping me on the other side. So I'm wondering if like, because there's only so much they can help us here, but then they help us on the other side. And I'm wondering if you've had that experience too, where it's like, it's your mom that's helping you over there.
Yes, yes. I moved quite a bit, and every time, especially when we moved to Minnesota, we were unsure if it was going to be the right fit. And then we moved here, and within the first day, I have 6 turkeys in my backyard. And I'm like, we are in the right spot. That is absolutely my mom. And I remember the day we moved in, my dad was like, let me know when Mom shows up. And within a few hours, I'm like, there's turkeys in the backyard.
It's so funny that you say that, because my mom was obsessed with these turkeys that were on our property. And every day every day my mom would send me like videos of these like literally 5 or 6 turkeys that would just always walk around our property. So it's really funny that you say that.
I love that. Yeah. Turkeys are funny.
Yeah. And if you're missing somebody on the other side this time of year, and this Samhain magic totally is a beautiful time to establish a sign with them or ask for a specific sign and just stay open. And, this is a magical week that if you're hearing this when it comes out, but even if you're not, it's a magical time of the year. So
yes.
I'm excited for you guys to try what Kate has shared and let us know how it goes for you, because I think it's going to be a really magical week.
Yes. Yep. And keep talking to your past loved ones. They can hear you.
Yep.
So.
The spirit world is literally here. So they can hear us, and they're always with us. And this is just a beautiful week to highlight that. But like Kate and I both said, you can connect with them year round, but it's just extra powerful right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Kate, for sharing all your wisdom.
Hi, my loves. Before we transition to sitting with spirit, I wanted to let you know about a special witchy offering. So with code MAGIC, all caps, magic, you get $66 off my Healing the Witch Wound workshop, which is the lowest price it will ever be available at. So I hope that you guys take advantage. The Healing the Witch Wound workshop is perfect for anybody who is interested in tapping into their magic, but feels a little bit of superstition or fear or mistrust and wants to dive deeper into the history of the word witch, the history of the witch wound, what the witch wound really is, how it affects us in every area of life, as well as tracing your own modern witch's journey, getting in touch with your own intuitive gifts, getting some practical spell work advice, as well as tracing the wheel of the year and following that rhythmic nature with ritual suggestions, archangel suggestions. It's such a beautiful offering, and I really hope that you'll take advantage of this special witchy magical time of the year and activate your own magic and take it to the next level. And if you're interested in more of a full spectrum offering and developing your intuition as well, I've also created a limited time bundle of the Healing the Witch Wound workshop, the Be Your Own Angelic Intuitive workshop, as well as the Deepening Your Connection with Spirit guided meditation. And this bundle is at a very discounted rate. It's an amazing deal. Go to angelsandamethyst.com if you're interested. I really hope you take advantage of this offer and this time of year. Again, that's code MAGIC for just the Witch Wound workshop. And then there will be a bundle that has the Be Your Own Angelic Intuitive, Healing the Witch Wound, and the Deepening the Connection to Spirit. I really hope that these tools will be supportive to you on your own journey. And so many Coven members have already reported such magical manifestations, encounters, intuitive uploads, and such magic. So go to angelsandamethyst.com, and I'm so excited for you to check it out. Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit, my loves, the part of the podcast where I sit with Spirit, tune into the messages from our angels and our loved ones in spirit, take what resonates with you, leave the rest. So it's really interesting because when I started tuning in this week, the very first thing that I got was this heightened sense of fear. And it's really interesting to me how this time of Halloween, this time when the veil is thin, is also a time where there's heightened fear. It's almost like fear of the divine, fear of the spirit world. It's like as old as time. And that makes me really sad. You know, even in the ancient times, well, I don't know about ancient times, but like trick or treat, if you don't give them a treat, then some ghost thing, spooky creature is going to come into your house. The witches' holiday, the witches' new year, and this sacred time of year is always so tied up with fear. And it feels like fear overall is turned up right now, not just about Halloween, not just about, fear of the spirit world, but fear for our future, fear for where we're going, fear for where we're going as a collective. And I feel a lot of crown chakra blocks right now, a lot of overthinking, a lot of rumination, a lot of just going down dark pathways in our mind and sort of spiraling and co-creating. And I think one of the first messages is just about our relationship to fear overall, because fear is a messenger. It's trying to keep us safe. And with this time of year, with Scorpio season, it is a heightened time for shadow work, for stepping into our power, for reclaiming our power. So it's this time where we're worried, where we're really projecting into the future, where we're extra wondering what's going to happen. And I just feel like the tie between fear and the spirit world is so heightened and in our face this time of year. And I don't think it's any accident that those two are energetically linked. And I think it's purposeful. My wish is that we can turn from fear of the unknown to fully jumping headfirst into it and trusting it and celebrating the love that exists within it. So it's interesting because when I was tuning into the messages this week. I've been getting this message many weeks in a row of a pathway, and that basically we can't see too far down the path, that we have to stay on this one immediate step and just stay in the present moment and then take the next step. But what they're showing me this week is the path vanishing. It's no longer even a pathway. It's a marker on the life map that is a rebirth moment. And so the path vanished and the womb space took its place. So it feels like this week is a very powerful moment for rebirth. And now that I actually reflect on that, that makes a lot of sense with what we were talking about with the witch's new year. But this is an important marker on our map of rebirth, of creation, and of making new energetic choices. And so the message that I'm getting is that the way to move forward right now is not tied to potential, is not even tied to long-term goals. It's tied to what our heart asks for here and now. Because when we try to walk the path from a place of attachment to outcome and wanting something to happen so desperately or trying to hit a goal, etc., we can sometimes be out of alignment with our higher self, and our higher self follows what our heart asks of us. But if we can live in alignment with what our heart is asking for us here and now, that will then sort of readjust timelines, and there will be a domino effect of energy and everything will start to change. So if you're sort of putting up with something that you know isn't good for you because you hope that it changes, they're showing me that's not the energetic highest choice at this moment. This moment really is a rebirth moment to cut cords with what we no longer accept in our life, what we want more of our life. I hope that when you do the divination practices from the episode, you can get more clearly on what this rebirth moment means to you. And so if you're kind of spinning out in your head, like, what does this mean about my future? Where am I going? What's going to happen 5 years from now? It's like all of that does not feel like the best use of our energy. The best use of our energy feels like what is in our power here and now. And I hope I'm communicating this correctly, because it's not even the path, like I'm saying. It's not even about where we're going. It's literally about here and now, this rebirth moment, shedding an outdated story of self so that our true self can emerge in a way that then allows everything else to shift. So it's like not trying to walk anywhere, not trying to create something, not trying to go somewhere, but instead focusing on the shedding of old skin so that you will attract what is in your highest good. So it's a really powerful moment, and they just don't want you to get caught up in the big picture right now. It feels like they really want you to focus on the micro of what's in your control here and now. I also felt like around this time, it's such a push-pull between fear and constriction. And it's so interesting because I was giving a reading the other day and I was feeling into somebody who was so afraid of spirit. And when I tapped into her energy, it was like this visceral, panicking, fight or flight feeling. And I feel like Halloween with scary movies and costumes and trick-or-treating, it's like really, it's a fun time. And I know it's not like that serious. And I'm just being extra sensitive because I love the spirit world so much. But there also are so many subconscious programs about possession and demons and scary things and hell, all of these dark things that co-create with our witch wound and co-create with our fear of spirit. And it manifests, unfortunately, as a disconnection from our birthright of intuitive reclamation when listened to. And right now is a time, like I started with, where this fear is really turned up. And that same voice of fear tries to make us feel constricted, tries to make us feel like we have limitations. Like as I feel into this, it's like that voice of fear is trying to take away our options, make us feel small, make us feel like there isn't anything better than we could plan for ourselves. But then conversely, I feel this other force, which is love, which is our angels, which is our higher self, which is our power, which is the new version of self that wants to emerge. And I just see this like whole line of angels walking with us. And I feel like there's this message here of this is a breaking point. that part of the rebirth moment is saying F fear. I'm going to make this choice right now. I'm going to shed a layer. I'm going to say no to something that isn't working. I'm going to let myself be vulnerable. I'm going to let myself try my best. Whatever it is that you've been avoiding, this is this moment of just leaning fully into love, even if the path is scary, even if it feels unknown. It's not even about where you're going right now. It's about doing the best with where you are and co-creating with that force of love, because this also feels like a moment where there's incredible potential for magic. It feels like a time where you're going to be in this in between. Like there might be some important decisions. There might be things that are kind of half right, but not quite, that you're wondering if you should settle for or not. And it just feels like it's this boss moment. It's this moment to get clear on your morals, your values, your desires, your authentic self, and to really do a checklist of here and now if your life is matching up with that. So it feels very powerful, very layered. It feels like the old and the new paradigms are in a tug of war for dominance on the macro and the micro. And that it's really important for us on the micro to stay in our power, to stay in our presence, and to really no longer co-create with what isn't working for us, and to throw away the idea of the path this week and focus on the rebirth moment right here, right now, and the important decision making and what's coming with us and what is not. I also got a really interesting message from our angels about science. And they were saying science is starting to catch up with magic faster. And if you've listened to, I believe it's episode 105 with Jessica Gill, I love that episode. Go back and listen if you haven't yet. We talked about how magic and science are just different sides of the same coin, and how I like to approach this work with a very grounded, practical, evidential based mindset. And they were saying that like more and more scientific and government agencies are going to start to tap in and remember and utilize spiritual gifts, consciousness, and that spirit is working with humanity in such a big way to evolve our consciousness, to help us, and that we might start seeing science maybe talking more about auras, or science talking more about past loved ones. I don't know how it's going to manifest, but science is starting to catch up with magic, which I think is really beautiful, because I think that's going to be a process that helps heal the witch wound and helps give credibility to what people on the spiritual path have been saying for a long time. So that message made me really excited. The other message that I got about this rebirth moment is that part of the reason the pathway is disappearing is because it's a moment where we have to check in with ourselves to make sure if this path even still resonates with us. Because we're in this moment where many new paths might start emerging, and where we might have to make some new decisions. And it's like this check-in point. Like, do you even want to be on this path? Do you still believe what you're fighting for? Do you still resonate with this job, relationship, location, story that you've been telling yourself for a long time? So if the path is feeling a little bit clunky or difficult, it's almost this moment that's pumping the brakes intentionally so that you can reflect and make sure that it's still in alignment with what you see for yourself and what resonates with your heart. It's just an important time. Our choices right now are so important, and the opportunity to step into a new version of self is so powerful too. So I really hope I'm doing an okay job communicating this, because as it comes through to me, there's such big topics and it's so intense that it's sometimes hard for me to find the language to adequately articulate that. So we did have a past loved one in spirit come through today. This was an older gentleman, a grandfather on the mother's side of the family. And I did feel something like Parkinson's. I believe he had Parkinson's, and something that left him sort of out of control of his own body and really dependent on other people to care for him. And I also got this feeling with him that he would have had a really hard time speaking, especially in the last 6 months of his life. It feels like he couldn't talk, he couldn't articulate himself, and that feels very difficult. I also got that he was really attached to his mustache and that his mustache was really important to him and that he had a thank you for someone who groomed him and kept his mustache good for him when he couldn't take care of himself. I was also sensing a J name that could be his name, his first or last. And then I also felt like he was with his wife in spirit. And I felt like this man's personality was sort of watchful and quiet, and he just enjoyed being around family, but in no way was he the center of attention or the loudest person in the room. I also feel like there's a current woman in his family with cancer that he's talking about, somebody who's here living, battling cancer, and he's like basically telling me to say that he's with her and he's holding her hand and he's helping her from the other side with that battle, because he feels like he couldn't be present for her in the way he wanted to because of his battle with Parkinson's. And so now that he's on the other side, he can be there for her in a different way than he could while she was here for him. So there's a message that came in from him that was so beautiful. And to put it into words, he was basically saying that at the end of his life, he couldn't talk, but that he communicated to his loved ones that visited him through his eyes, through the love in his eyes. And there's this beautiful sentiment for the collective as well, that there's not a big difference between how your loved one who is nonverbal communicates through sending you love, through their eyes, through maybe a quick, tap on the shoulder or squeeze of the hand to let you know that they appreciate you, and how the spirit world communicates with you. It's like once you go nonverbal, once you're not in control of your body anymore, and you can only communicate through that exuding of love to your loved ones and hope that they know and hope that they understand. There's something similar here with how people in the spirit world, it's like the same exact language of love. It's a nonverbal language of love, and they communicate through maybe squeezing your hand or playing with your hair or sending you signs or sending you people that look like them or bringing up a memory of a photo of them on your phone. It's like they're finding creative ways so that I love you. And that when they are sending you those things, they want you to know, thank you, I love you. And they can't say it. They can't say it in words, I should say. And so it was just really beautiful, because he basically said that he learned the language of nonverbal love at the end of his life, and that that's the language that continues on the other side. And I found that so beautiful. And especially like he just had these really beautiful brown eyes as I'm tapping into him, and they seem so soulful and expressive. And I feel like there's just such a beautiful connection about how much we can say without our words, with just a feeling, a look, a knowing, a gesture, a touch. And so, the language of spirit is not overly complicated. It's simple, and it's a language of love. And so I love that this grandfather energy came in to remind us of that. And I really hope that it finds who it needs to. This is also, of course, for the collective, that our ancestors in spirit are speaking a language of love, and the littlest things for a language of love go a long way. And there's also a message from this grandfather of wishing and being frustrated that he couldn't speak the way he wanted to at the end. But there's also something here of like hoping that how grateful he was for the help, for the love, for the company, how the family was with him at the end. And so if you have loved ones who are in a hospice situation or who are nonverbal or who don't fully have control of their body, they're still speaking a language of love to you, and you've learned that language. This is just that language in a new form. And I think if you can think about it that way, it might help you have breakthroughs in your connection with your loved ones on the other side. So that's the message today. Honor your ancestors, speak that language of love to them, and they speak it back. It's sort of like if a loved one here is in a hospice situation and we don't know if we can feel them or we can see them, that's not so different than what we're doing on the other side. It's like these shows of love and these shows of faith, this show of family connection that we are sending into the spirit world. And people on the other side will say, I heard you. I heard you. And I'm so grateful for everything you did when you didn't know if I could hear you or not. And it's almost like these sort of end of life transitionary times are teaching us the exact lessons that we need to transition our relationship. It's like when our past loved one passes, that version of self that we were passes with them too, and we transition to a new way and a new relationship with them. So I really love how this is coming full circle to the lessons that we get when our past loved ones are nonverbal or we're not sure if they can even hear us. And that it's a very similar principle to how it is when they're on the other side, and that same show of faith and love and connection, whether or not you can see or hear them, just knowing that they can see and hear you and that they love you and that it means the world. So this Samhain, if you do little things to honor your ancestors, anything that feels good for you, just know in the same way that you holding their hand at the end when you weren't sure if they knew, it's the same thing. They know, they feel it, they love you, and they will give you the language of love in whatever way they can to communicate that they are still with you. So I hope that you have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your week, my loves. This is a big energetic moment. Just release fear of the future, stay present, make decisions based off of who you are now, really create energetic strategies that resonate with who you are now, because this is a really important moment in our timeline. And I just really can't stress enough that fear will try to make you feel limited or constricted, and that that's part of what we're releasing and shedding as well. Because what they were showing me is like the reason that the path started to disappear is that was becoming too fear-based, based on outcomes, based on ego, and that it's really time for a deep dive check-in with our soul and our heart, and to make sure that we're in alignment with what we truly deserve. So have a beautiful week, my loves, and I will catch you next time. Much love.
For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and we will send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Page. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 166 5-star reviews.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Page. Remember, you are magic.